Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome to this morning's episode. Hopefully my voice is loud and clear. And so it begins. You know, last night I had a very interesting thought. It was very interesting to me because I didn't know what I could do with it. You know, a human being, we can say we are creatures that use information. So what that means is, like how we breathe, how oxygen circulates in our system, we can say information circulates in our intelligence, you know. And I was wondering about the game of life, you know, not what the outer appearance of it, what you gotta do, how you gotta be, how you gotta look. All of that is in, you know, that has its place. But I thought about it just for myself. I felt that, let's say, reality is an endless simulation. It can happen in endless ways. Let's say a person suddenly realized they can have a choice in their multidimensionalism. What that means is we are treating this life as the main event. But what if this life is not the main event? What if this life, this individual human life, is like a leaf, and there is a state of being where the person realizes all the leaves on the tree? You know, that means from within we can know the universe, but in front of our eyes the universe is unknown. I wondered about why existence should be here, and this episode is may get a bit nihilist as a warning, but we're creatures, for God's sakes. We're creatures on a rock. It starts like that. This creature moves. As it moves, it realizes there is more than an object here. There's an object being observed, and this classification. That means the aftermath of an object being observed equals the subject. We needed something to subjectify, you know. And you can say that maybe human beings began naming stuff outside of themselves first before naming themselves. This is a very peculiar thing, you know, that the outside world had meaning before the inner world did. It doesn't mean the inner world wasn't there. But it's as if we noticed our bodies before our minds, so we are under the impression there are only bodies, and the mind is a hallucination of an elemental position. When it comes to the general philosophy of the world, I would say it's pretty binary. There's either something here or there isn't. If I choose to consider there isn't, I will never know. There could be something even here, but because I'm saying it isn't, it isn't. You know? But if the person says there is something, then they can see if it's not there. That means there's a difference between someone wondering about I mean, this is a ridiculous example, but let's say Bigfoot, for example, okay? Someone says Bigfoot doesn't exist, you know? And somebody says, no, Bigfoot exists, right? Both possibilities. Now, it could be that the person goes and checks and sees there was no Bigfoot, but maybe it was like an, I don't know, some sort of mutation or something. Or just the view that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. You know, that we realize it's orbiting around the sun. That means think as if like Galileo back in the day, you know, telling people, hey, you know, there's more to this, you know. You know, the Earth is spinning around the sun, and people are like, hey man, you know, keep your superstition to yourself, you know. You know. So pretty much I wondered about existence and my attention to it. And I felt that if the mind is beyond time, the body is in time, the body is endlessly spiraling through time, the mind is like a straight line through the spiral. Pretty much it's all classifications of an intelligent moment. These classifications really create reality. So we have divided and conquered the world through mouth noises. I do not know any visible phenomena with an eternal purpose. That means everything from even moments of sight. Just like the person looks at the sky, it's a certain way in a certain moment, and then an hour later they look at it, different clouds, different situation. It's like the space, different color. The space is the same, but the appearance changes. And you know what's even phenomenal? We didn't even only name objects. Our species had the audacity to name the emptiness. You know, can you believe that? That requires a lot of evolutionary guts, literally. We need like a proper brain, you know? But anyways, some questions, they're just emotions from other moments. And some questions, they lead to emotions, to moments to come, moments that haven't come yet. I would say, does the invisible have design? Really what it is that when I look at my body, it has design. If I saw the moment as two sides of a coin, there's the objective mobility, how I'm mobile as an object, and then the awareness to this object equates as a subject. So what's funny is that it is true, we're not ideas, behind the curtain. We are an object, yet this object exists to be experienced by a mind. That means it's as if two components, we're seeing it as one. Mind and body are separate, but we're seeing it as if they're the same thing. I would say the invisible can have design in the same way that different animals with different eyes perceive differently. So, even beyond human eyes, how many ways of looking at a moment are there? That means think of like we had a machine. This is poetic, but let's say in the future there was a machine that could create any eye of an animal, and it became a fad. It became like something where people in the future were like, yo, instead of a tattoo, I'm gonna go get my eyes changed into a cat's eyes, or an eagle's eyes or whatnot. If we could have any different eyes, even imagine like a bit further ahead in nightclubs in the future, people, it's going to be a fad. Like through nanotechnology, you can have an animal head. So imagine you go to a nightclub and in the VIP section, there's literally people with the head of you know, like Anubis or you know, Thoth or whatnot, like as if like I could totally see. It's like we human beings we've got it wrong. We think there's such a thing as human history. No, humanity is a chapter in the history of the universe. I would say that imagination, I mean, I maybe should have chosen a different word than invisible, maybe intangible. But intangible but actually invisible works. Imagination is not technically visible to our biological eyes. That means when a person enters a bus, like a public bus, the person cannot see the inner realms of the people. We can see people's behavior, which give us a sense of what's going on in their inner realms, but we can never know another person's inner realm. It's as if like their imagination is everybody's imagination is their own private office. That means unless they open the doors to it, it's closed to the world. we can say that a cube, a three-dimensional phenomena, and a square, a two-dimensional phenomena. The two-dimensional phenomena, from a two-dimensional reality, let us use the flatland metaphor. So let's use the flatland metaphor, and a two-dimensional being cannot conceive a three-dimensional being. But a three-dimensional being can fathom 6 different types of two-dimensional being. A cube can fathom in 6 dimensions 2 different kind of 2D dimensions. That means the ability of the 3D is mobility in the 2D. You know, so it feels as if biological existence is the glove of a field of intelligence, which is the hand moving it. You see, it's a very unique implication. If we realize that behind our eyes there is a collectivity at work, that we are technically energy, and energy could never be separate, but it was only divided and conquered to our individual phase of living, then in some sense the story of the world is what we want to see in it. You know, the eyes are a gift. I would tell you, anybody who is grateful for what is being, what you do becomes easier automatically. But if the person doesn't want the moment, then they cannot tolerate it, you know. There's some people who they want perfection in their inner realms, so they can't be tolerant about the outer realms. It's a sort of insecurity of mind, you know. I have wondered about dictator psychology. And I'll tell you that really what it is growing through a game. That means every human being is playing a game with themselves, and they're playing a game with the world. And these two games are usually different, but if they can see the world, if they can play the game of the world first, then the game of the self, their self learns from the world. If they play the game of the self first, then the world learns from themselves, you know. And we have to wonder about the implication of freedom in a multidimensional context, you know. If we are multidimensional beings, that means multiple realities are valid at the same time. If we are only in one dimension, there's only one truth. It's like, I better not hear anyone say otherwise, you know? Like, that's the situation, right? And when I say imaginations dance, for me, it's as if there is reality. There is no such thing as imagination, even, you can consider. There's just reality, but reality moving at different speeds. That means a person can imagine an object still, and a person can imagine, like here, I'll give you an example. I'm imagining, like, I don't need to even imagine, in front of me there's a cup of coffee, okay? This cup of coffee, I don't need to imagine anything. I can just stare at it, one option. The other option is I can try to imagine it on the same object. That means imagine my mind imagined a copy-paste version of this coffee cup right beside it. Then my imagination moved that copy-paste version of the cup back into the cup. So imagine in like 2 dimensions you put one object. So I can see the subject as the object. I can see the subject move beyond the object, and I can see the object and subject completely separate, and I can totally see that there is no objects, just like how we have imagination being dependent on reality. It would be reality dependent on imagination. It would be the other way. So it may be the case that human beings possess the ability to govern multidimensionally behind their eyes, even though their output is limited to a singular way. That means I have one voice, but behind my eyes, it's like a landscape I'm seeing. You see how, for example, in this picture, the wallpaper of this talk, there is a mountain, there's trees, there's scenery, there's a landscape. In my inner realms, the visual content, the sub-visual content is as clear as this when I speak. There's something about the ability of the mind that it's like so weird, because that moment where, in the example I was using earlier, where I imagined the copy-paste in a visualization of the coffee cup going back and sitting right on top of that exact coffee cup, that's a moment where imagination and reality are inseparable. We don't know if reality is being imagined, or we don't know if imagination is real, right? So, let us say we were multidimensional. That means I am visualizing, for example, another cup of coffee, let's say. It's just, can you imagine it? I'm like, all right, listeners, an exercise for today. Imagine as many cups of coffees on the table as you can. You know, in the inner realms, we only know that which is creative. That means it's like the person wondering, wait a minute, when I remember something that happened in the past, am I creating a new memory, therefore re-rendering the past memory through the new memory? The best thing I can say is that our bodies are like ice, you know, are like a substance in its solid form. Our minds are like fluid, they're like a river, like water. You know, they're flexible. A person can change their mind. If you don't use your mind, you can poetically say your mind evaporated. Yeah. It's as if they're like, the person's like, you know, imagine somebody just does something intense and they're like, oh my God, that person's out of his mind. And they're like, no, that person's mind evaporated a long time ago. Ultimately, it's an attention present. We can say that if the mind has experienced the solid state, the liquid state, the gas state has also been experienced. So we could create 3 dimensions. We could create a dimension of individuals, beings, collective beings, which pretty much is the work of the mind. The mind is like a USB. It needs to connect to other minds to feel alive, really. And so individual beings, collective beings, and beyond beings. And I think that's the best way of talking about it. That means we have, when I say beyond beings, literally you can see it in 2 ways, where it's beyond being, individual or collective, and it's just beings from the beyond. I feel those 2 words are the most incredibly placed words. I don't know why, but there's something beyond beings, you know, which is an unfathomable even 2 words, because to be, when we talk about the beyond, we can only know it's there if it's being. So to know a beyond being, it's like from a 2-dimensional view, Like we're trying to see beyond the third dimension. And that's the thing, like the spectrum can continue. Like when I think about it, it's like, who came up with the alphabet? Why did nobody care to like change the alphabet? You know, people run in the streets, freedom, you know, but they don't. It's like, how much are we caring for the freedom of how the world activates in our eyes? You know? Because that's really what waking up is. It's just being active. That means that's one thing the dream and the awakening have in common. They're both, you can do activities in both. You can move in your dreams. I've had a dream personally, a few dreams where I could have moved in them, you know? I've had a dream where in the dream my eyes moved out of a body that wasn't mine back into my own body, like even that intense. But it was all in a dream state. So that's the thing, you know. It's the like this is even what, like I'm meshing in too many ideas, but I'm saying like, how can we say a person moving in a dream is less real than a person moving in real life? That means if a dream doesn't end, it's literally in like reality. We can't tell it apart. It's only through the ending that we know it's a dream. That means all the human beings that were like, oh my God, is this world a simulation or not? It is only through endings we discover, we awaken, you know? And so here's the thing. If there is a chance that we are not human beings, even though we're dressing ourselves ideologically as human beings, then the mystery of our being surpasses all the ways that knowledge has spread out so far. There's a saying they say, when in Rome, be Roman. Now imagine that you were in a higher dimension, you know? Or let's say instead of a higher dimension, you were in a multidimensional reality. So it's like, when in the multidimensional, be multidimensional. When in the singular, be singular. When in the void, be void. There's this story about Confucius, that he was walking with a bunch of his disciples, and they see this old guy with a basket on top of this like a waterfall dash cliff, and the old guy suddenly falls. And it's like, it's that moment where Confucius and all his disciples in their inner realms are like, holy shit, you know, this old guy with the basket's falling, you know? The old guy falls in the water, but suddenly, in a very miraculous, strange way, steps out of the water, and the basket and everything in the basket is dry, and the guy is not wet. And it's like this weird moment where all of Confucius' disciples, they gasp and are like, oh, what the fuck? But Confucius smiles, and he goes up to the person, to the old man, and he's like, sir, I thought you were a human being, but now I see you're a ghost, you know? You're a spirit. And the old man gets offended, and he's like, I'm not a spirit, you know? Watch your mouth, kid. You know? And Confucius is shocked. And Confucius now is like, what do you mean? You know? And the old guy's like, I'm a human being. But it's just that when I fell into the water, I stopped being a human being and I became the water. When I stepped out of the water, I stopped being the water and I became a human being. So that could be the truer nature of the realm. It could be that we are dressed in the garb, in the elemental garb of the human form. It's as if is evolution this endless movement up a hierarchy of behavior, or is it adjustment to choice? Because when we think about the purpose, guys, like as a species, if we were to see it, our purpose was based on the world, our evolution, you know. Now imagine the world suddenly vanished and we were all in like an interstellar city in space. What would be the purpose in empty space? It would only be creativity. That's all we can do in space, just put stuff in it. I feel that if everybody had the inventor's mindset, the world would be liberated in like 50 years. And if we saw it as multidimensional, that means there was no such thing as knowledge. There were just eyes that were seeing. You know, Henry David Thoreau, this incredibly enlightened American poet, he says, it's not what you're looking at that matters, it's what you see. And you know, to talk about design and the imagination is the most complex thing, because really design is being imagined upon reality. You know, it's like when a person looks at somewhere and they're like, yeah, I can build something here, build a house here. You know, that's like literally the imagination, which is a design, is using design. That means something, or I could say it's so fascinating because sometimes I think another word for imagination would be anti-reality. Like a matter, we have antimatter. That means just the philosophical implication of antimatter. The philosophical implication of antimatter, you know? Can you imagine being antimatter? Somebody's like, make up your mind, goddammit. Here's the thing. I've ran 28 laps around the sun, and I can tell you that we don't know enough about the human being. It's like, just like there's uncharted territory, there was uncharted territory in the outer realms. We pretty much scoped a lot of it and still are. You know, some beings are exploring the outer realms, but when it comes to the inner realms, there hasn't been the proper motivation. And the reason is because the hamster wheel is the error. You see, there's this question, sorry, not a question. There's this thing they say, if they make you ask the wrong question, they don't have to worry about your answers. And you can even see it like some characters, like this next level character in an action movie, you know, that comes, and the next level character, you know, just drops like some robotic device, and that robotic device turns into a machine and fights the opponent, literally like he throws a bone for the dog that was attacking him, right? So I often get this feeling that what are these bones that are being thrown as ideologies moving, walking in the streets among people? Do you know, it's just fascinating. Sometimes I'm like, okay, are we really rational creatures? Does it really make sense to build a scientific civilization? You know? I value science and its special, how would I say, the significance of discrimination between what is truly an object and what is truly a subject is needed. It's just that because human behavior has access to another room of influence, which is the mind's own probabilities, which it chooses from. So I wanted to say the world is poetic. The world creates us, then we create the world. And it's like we're playing tag between individual states of influence and collective states of influence. Now, to design a proper civilization, well, first we got to think of it this way, that any work requires a proper workspace. And so if we build a civilization that has really paid attention to how to create an efficient workspace, the workspace will echo from the house to the home of the person, and then to the heart. You know, right now it's strange. It's like if you try to fathom civilization in the opposite way, you'd be like, okay, let's imagine there was no poverty, there was no world hunger, there were no war, if there was all the opposite of everything we're seeing going on in the world right now. It's as if, regardless of whatever kind of world we find, the creature lives by adding dimensions to the world. So it doesn't matter what world our eyes find themselves in, they will inquire. So that means the human eyes will never be satisfied. So many people seek answers in life, but how many people really wonder about what the right question is? You know? And I can tell you that question let's call it the edge of the world question. Any system you wonder about its edge, you meet the unknown. And I feel this is why a lot of people are uncomfortable with the why questions in life. Because when you wonder about why something is here, it surpasses even the need to input a structure. Let's say the leaf that's connected to a branch has no way of fathoming the branch. It can't imagine what the branch is, comparing it to all its knowledge of what a leaf is. It just knows that at some point the stem's vitality the leaf's vitality, it comes from its connection to the branch. Now, this leaf in the lifetime has an ability to notice that it's connected to the branch and to realize it is the branch. Do you know? If the leaf doesn't realize it is the branch, the leaf falls. That's it. So that means either the matter is used to reveal the secret behind space, or matter returns to space. I wanted to go into a quote tunnel on the invisible. So for those who are new, quote tunnels, pretty much I read a bunch of quotes. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Jonathan Swift. Vision is the art of seeing what is invisible to others. Joseph B. Wirthlin. The more often we see the things around us, even the beautiful and wonderful things, the more they become invisible to us. That is why we often take for granted the beauty of this world, the flowers, the trees, the birds, the clouds, even those we love. Because we see things so often, we see them less and less. Marianne Williamson. The law of divine compensation posits that this is a self-organizing and self-correcting universe. The embryo becomes a baby, the bud becomes a blossom, the acorn becomes an oak tree. Clearly, there is some invisible force that is moving every aspect of reality to its next best expression. First of all, what a great, I can't say it enough, guys. Great quote. This is honestly, I think, one of the best quotes I've seen in the month of October. Wow, R. Buckminster Fuller. 99% of who you are is invisible and untouchable. I'm sure he's relating to that, Adam. Francois Mauriac says to love someone is to see a miracle invisible to others. Emmanuel Joel says war destroys people's souls. Most people focus on physical injuries, but the invisible injuries can take a lifetime to heal and affects the lives of generations to come. Svetlana Alexievich says, what I'm concerned with is what I would call the missing history, the invisible imprint of our stay on earth and in time. James Joyce, the artist, like the God of the creation, remains within or behind or beyond or above his handiwork, invisible, refined out of existence, indifferent, paring his fingernails. Guys, this next quote is hilarious. James Buchan says an atheist is a man who has no invisible means of support. You know what it is? It's like the same invisibility of any idea. It's like all ideas are invisible. Their design is visible, we can't touch them, even the idea of the person, you know. That means the ego is an invisible means of support. But I'm pretty sure James means one can be in the present without requiring desires from the past or the future. Alright, let's go into an imagination quote tunnel. George Orwell says, if you want a vision of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. Holy shit. Robin Williams, you're only given a little spark of madness. You mustn't lose it. Michelangelo, I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. Albert Einstein, logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. Gilbert K. Chesterton, there are no rules of architecture for a castle in the clouds. Michelangelo says every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it. You can say, like, what the same algorithm of vision perception Michelangelo has here, you can say it's the same. You know, that in every moment there's a great moment inside it. You have to just sculpt it, you have to find it, you know. And I don't want to say you have to find it, but it's like think of that martial artist just like being super calm in the middle of battle, and suddenly he suddenly calculates, aims at the proper technique and like the, you know. In every moment there is a genius design. It's extracted with endless endurance. That's the only way. That's the only way to know your real self. You know, that means it doesn't matter what the person does, but to just think of it this way, as if, imagine there was a school and the homework was study or attention. Elizabeth Bowen says one can live in the shadow of an idea without grasping it. Pablo Picasso says everything you can imagine is real. Immanuel Kant says happiness is not an ideal of reason but of imagination. Walt Disney says, I only hope that we don't lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse. You know, regardless of how good or bad we are as human beings, it's like we are performing in an event, right? And it's as if there is a sort of honor to just participating in existence, I would say. Regardless of the morality aside, just to exist alongside of nature and to walk the through steps of the newest update of the evolution. I mean, Simone Weil, imagination and fiction make up more than 3/4 of our real life. That's so true. Robert Collier says, visualize this thing that you want, see it, feel it, believe in it. Make your mental blueprint and begin to build. Salvador Dali says, those who do not want to imitate anything produce nothing. George Orwell says, each generation imagines itself to be more intelligent than the one that went before it and wiser than the one that comes after it. George Lucas, you can't do it unless you can imagine it. Steven Spielberg says you have many years ahead of you to create the dreams that we can't even imagine dreaming. You have done more for the collective unconscious of this planet than you will ever know. Thomas A. Edison says to invent, you need a good imagination and a pile of junk. Even though I don't feel Edison had that kind of a sense of humor, but this is the funniest statement I've heard in my life. So funny, I feel compelled to make a Facebook post that I haven't for eons yet. So Edison is just admitting that he was, working with junk, but he managed to change it into an invention. Guys, can you imagine Thomas Edison with a pile of junk, like in his yard or something, and he's about to use his imagination to invent the light bulb. Then he suddenly goes to get something from the house, imagine. Then he comes and sees somebody's taking the junk away and throwing it out, And Thomas Edison says, hey, don't touch that junk. That pile of junk, I need it. And the person's like, what could you possibly need this pile of junk? You know? It's like, I need that pile of junk to create a completely new system of light, Anyways, guys, sorry, I'll move on from this. Dr. Seuss, think left and think right and think low and think high. Oh my god. Oh, the things you can think up if you only try. Like Dr. Seuss sounds like an elf is trying to escape outside from inside him, And Mark Twain says you can't depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. Pablo Picasso, I paint objects as I think them, not as I see them. Frank Capra says a hunch is creativity trying to tell you something. Wow, this quote is next level, guys. It's by Joseph Joubert. He says, imagination is the eye of the soul. Okay, and I'm going to go into a quote tunnel before I end the tunnels. Charles Eames. The details are not the details, they make the design. Brank Rickey says luck is the residue of design. Paul Rand says, design is the method of putting form and content together. Design, just as art, has multiple definitions. There's no single definition. Design can be art. Design can be aesthetics. Design is so simple. That's why it's so complicated. Design is a blessing, guys. The awareness to design. You can see so many species, they are aware of designs in the earth, but they don't do anything about it. We at least named objects, we classified things. The design of reality is so phenomenal that you can say every person, in some sense is a master, you can say painter, or designer. Let me tell you why. Because imagine the brain is like a camera, okay? But it's a camera where you're looking through the lens and you don't know if the cameraman is inside the camera or outside of the camera. We just know that the cameraman is looking through the lens of the camera, which is the first person point of view of through the biological eyes, right? So this camera is recording things, and it's like when we press the record button, that's conscious life. In deep sleep, we don't know, but I'm pretty sure like deep sleep has an influence on the dream state. That means if somebody from outside of deep sleep did something, said something, that's going to echo into the person sleeping in the room's psyche, you know. That means like a parent talking on the phone and their child sleeping is making a grave error, you know. Anyways, to continue. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. A chair is a very difficult object. A skyscraper is almost easier. That is why Chippendale is famous. Issei Miyake says, design is not for philosophy, it's for life. Dieter Ram says, good design is making something intelligible and memorable. Great design is making something memorable and meaningful. Le Corbusier. I can't do this. Okay. Space and light and order. Those are the things that men need just as much as they need bread or a place to sleep. So space, light, order. We had in Vedic thought Satchit Ananda. Order, that's consciousness. We say that's Chit, if I remember correctly. Sat is light. Or anyways, just the fact that there is consciousness, there is existence, and there is the space where it happens. That means, there's the space, there's the object moving in the space, which generates a subject which seems to be a space over the space. We have this view, matter is changing, but what if space is changing and we don't notice it? And that explains all the imagination. Anyways, Ivan Chermayev says design is directed toward human beings. To design is to solve human problems by identifying them and executing the best solution. I wouldn't say executing the best solution. Some problems, the person first has to see if it's a problem or not. That means some problems, the person can just communicate to the source of the problem and the problem stops, But some problems, if the problem can't stop on its own, then the person can intervene. Milton Glaser says to design is to communicate clearly by whatever means you can control or master. Paul Rand says design is everything. Everything! Alec Isigonis says a camel is a horse designed by committee. What else is there? Charles Eames says recognizing the need is the primary condition for design. Steve Jobs says design is not just what it looks like and feels like, design is how it works. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry says a designer knows he has achieved perfection not when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. For people who are in the artistic field, this is important quote. Donna Caron says, design is a constant challenge to balance comfort with lux, the practical with the desirable. Herbert A. Simon says, the proper study of mankind is the science of design. Steve Wozniak says, in the end, I hope there's a little note somewhere that says I designed a good computer. Christopher Alexander says complexity is one of the great problems in environmental design. Michael Graves says, if I have a style, I am not aware of it. Anselm Kiefer says, I believe in empty spaces. They're the most wonderful thing. Mike Davidson says, I don't start with a design objective. I start with a communication objective. I feel my project is successful if it communicates what it is supposed to communicate. Harry Seidler says, good design doesn't date. Alexander Wang says, I'm not like most designers who have to set sail on an exotic getaway to get inspired. Most of the time it's on my walk to work or sitting in the subway and seeing something random or out of context. Arthur Erickson says the details are the very source of expression in architecture, but we are caught in a vice between art and the bottom line. Friedrich August von Hayek says the curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they know about what they imagine they can design. Paul Rand says design is a way of life, a point of view. It involves the whole complex of visual communications, talent, creative ability, manual skill, and technical knowledge. All these things he just named are one moment. Aesthetics and economics, technology and psychology are intrinsically related to the process. Aesthetics and economics, technology and psychology. Yeah, I mean, our technology, the more it towers over us, the more it's going to define our psyche, you know. But if we keep things natural and we tower over the technology, there comes the, I don't know, nature movement. I would say the type of economical sector we have designed is one that it doesn't care for aesthetics. You see, inside of buildings are more beautiful than outside. That's technically artificial. That means it's like we haven't cared for the outside. And I feel we have to find some technology that allows us to make giant trees. Like we gotta like plant sequoias everywhere, and build like, you know, treehouse cities. And last but not least, a quote from David Hockney: art has to move you, and design does not, unless it's a good design for a bus. And last but not least, actually, I'm gonna read it. um, okay, there's these two quotes that are, I think, I feel necessary to read before I end. There's design and there's art. Good design is total harmony. There's no better designer than nature. If you look at a branch or a leaf, it's perfect. It's all function. Art is different. It's about emotion. It's about suffering and beauty, but mostly suffering. Walter Gropius uh, says our guiding principle was that design is neither an intellectual nor a material affair, but simply an integral part of the stuff of life, necessary for everyone in a civilized society. So we can technically say there is no good or bad in a way. It's all design being compared to other levels of design, other moments of design. I remember once I thought that just it was a sort of high, you can say inner realm uh, event or a moment. I just noticed something in my inner realms where I thought, what if we're on the planet Earth is just a rock that it's not habitable, and what we feel is us living on Earth are giant spheres of light, and we're inside it. You know, I had this sort of kind of leap in the inner realms to that imagery, but I don't know. There's so much to this world that it's like we take it seriously, we're temporary, we miss out. You know, we don't take it serious at all, then we can't build anything. You know, it's just it's as if there's you know what it is? It's as if people said balance is important, but when a person comes to balance, it's like there's that counter feeling. You know, I feel it's like unless the desire for advancement is satisfied, the person will just endlessly build. Like it's like that's what the mind is doing. The mind is reinventing. The attention is reinventing its own. Uh, I would say ideological position. I mean, think of just the fact that in language there's this thing that they say that a person who different people is like someone else, is like a person who has to remember various versions of themselves. I think it was Aristotle, somebody in those lines, where they were saying that the honest view doesn't have the burden of remembering all the artificial simulations of self. Either designs repeat, or new designs are added, or designs are forgotten. So we gotta treat like history as what's taking place on the surface of the planet. What's taking place on the surface of the planet has design. Now, when we zoom in onto this system, we see it's like various systems. Every person having their own, you can say, aim for their own survival. You know. It's as if every person is on first their inner journey, then they can choose to associate with the outer journey. Sometimes it's, I get surprised by how everything is being here before the person even has a reason for it. How we start from actually a singular moment that there is no choice to even doubt. That means before even the psychology of the person is an individual, you can't even doubt a system, you know. That means there's a reason, like you can't, they wouldn't, you like, the person has to be an individual first before they can have choice. When a person is not an individual, their choice is not in their own view. They're not the pilot. Now, we can't say that human beings on the planet have different kinds of experiences, different kind of genetics. So on some level, I feel even through psychology, there shouldn't be this assumption that we can know what's happening or what's going on. You know, it's like every problem is new. And realistically, I would say there are four options. Either there is no meaning, either there is everything is being the meaning, the other option, the third option, is we're oscillating between meaning and no meaning till the end of, there's no even end to time. We can't even say an end of time. But there's the endless dance of chaos and order, reality and imagination. So in one case we looked at life, it doesn't have a meaning, you know. In another view we saw that, yeah, it does have a meaning, everything is meaningful. In another view it's like, no, in certain ways it has meaning, in certain moments it doesn't. And then there's a view where it has meaning, and in some sense a meaning that is infinite. That means it's not that it doesn't have meaning, it's not that there isn't a truth, it's just that the truth is not conceivable. It's like the leaf on the branch of the tree again can't fathom, can't imagine the roots, you know. And I feel imagination is the eyes of the mind, and reality is the eyes of the body, really. And the eyes of the mind and the eyes of the body are like two-dimensionally different eyes that are being witnessed by the same moment, you know, as if like we thought the world was made of atoms. No, the psyche is made of eyes, and in each eyes there's more eyes, you know. There's so many eyes in this world, as much as space. It's too easy to see it as empty, so that I find that's why most people just deep down they know there's more to do in this world, you know, than the person just concluding there's no meaning to life. It's like, it's as if like we don't even know enough to know there's meaning or not, you know. But those people who say everything is meaningful, I feel this is it is an abundant view, but it is not perhaps an honest view, you know. That means a person can't treat like everything is one thing, you know. In Vedic thought there's this view that it's like everybody's God, so no, there's no point like to the language when everybody's present as it, you know. So in that case there's no people. Because there's no people, oneness doesn't need meaning. So in a weird way, oneness, everything is meaningful, yet it doesn't need the meaning because it's not separate, you know. But in the dualistic dimension, where I'm speaking to you and language lives here, this is where we have two options, where civilization in the future is either going to move towards the infinite, or it's going to towards the infinite void or the singular void. Okay? Literally, how I'm seeing it is pretty much civilization can speed up or slow down. If it speeds up, think of things that go, they get closer to the speed of light, it's as if time slows down. Now imagine something was moving faster than light. It would in some sense be inconceivable to a creature that's limited to receiving things from light. So if suddenly a friend of yours, let's say, could move at the speed of light, you know, it's as if there would be no time to say goodbye, you know. And you know, matter, space, and the force that causes movement are the three major things that pretty much is being life. That means to be alive you need space, You know, you need to be something, you need matter, and you need an awareness to how you're moving in space. You know, so technically we need to be creatures of matter, and then we need to actually be the space, then be aware that we're neither of the two. That way we can define something. That means if somebody, I'll give you an example. Imagine there was like a golden rock on the table. Now imagine your attention zoomed in inside that golden rock, right? And there you technically inside the golden rock you couldn't see the golden rock, right? So it would be a situation where your attention can't observe the golden rock on the table because it's inside it, so you can't define it. So you can only define if your attention moves outside, right? So if I say I'm a certain thought, that's defined. That's literally going into statue mode, you know? You know? Anytime a person, you know, their belief doesn't have multidimensional tolerance, I'm like, God, it's like, you know, like Medusa, you know, like the person becomes stone. I would say we can say there is two types of people on the planet. I would say two types of, let me make this more specific. Two types of advanced communicators, let's say. There are those people who focus on precision. So you can say there's some human beings on this planet where when things speed up, their life force amplifies, you know. I would say these are fast communicators. It's kind of those people who are drawing quickly rather than taking their time, you know. And so the focus on the quality is like we have the slow communicators. Now, both have different advantages and disadvantages. When someone communicates really quickly, the world image can change, but it doesn't mean the depth of it is there. But when someone communicates something slowly, imagine, I would say, like, this may sound strange, but I feel dancing is slower than speech. That means like freestyle rapper or a beatboxer. I feel the speed and the precision allowed in speech can surpass the innovation, the mobility of just the person dancing, for example. The fast don't fear the unknown. The slow don't fear the known. You know, guys, silence is the most important thing, and to notice the observer. I can tell you that as much as a person, you can say when a person listens, they are hearing the voice of their outer realms. But when a person is silent and alone, that's when they can start observing the content of their mind. This doesn't mean to not have thoughts or try to destroy the ego or something, as the ignorant instructions and meditations have been in the past. Um, and that means that it's like the point of meditation is not to have thought, is to realize you're not a thought, so you could never have it. You know. We can even classify all of knowledge between the known. All of we either repeat or we invent. That means any moment in life can be new. That means the person can literally look at it from the inner realms in a new way, or you can even do something differently in the outer realms. You know, it's like we became responsible for the body. Now we require to become responsible for the mind. And the only way we can become responsible to it, as Joseph Joubert was saying in one of the quotes I was reading earlier, imaginations die of the soul. And I would kind of add to that, imagination is like actually the mind's movement. The soul is witnessing it. So when the mind asks itself, what am I? The soul is the witness, the only remaining witness, because the mind knows it is not the only. Like, think of it as if there's like 3 tenants in the room: the body, the mind, and the soul. Okay? The body is, in some sense, is aware of the mind, and the mind is aware of the body, but the mind is not aware of the third tenant, the soul. If the soul is observing the movement of the mind, the soul cannot be defined by movement. It cannot be a 3D truth, cannot be known from a 2D illusion, metaphorically speaking. We we can say the mover that brings the design is the design. If we say an invisible force, like the free will is some sort of invisible wind moving the hand of the person, let's say the person raises their hand, right? So it's as if an invisible instruction is causing a visible phenomena to move, right? And the moment I move my hand, the design of where my hand is in the space changes, right? So does the invisible have design? The answer is they are simultaneous. So the answer will be, it's as if like it's the other side of the coin. So I would answer my own question, which is the topic. Does the invisible have design? It can't be fathomed otherwise. It's like we need reality first, and then it's like, okay, that's imagination, but so get your imagination out of my store. Anyways, guys, imagination's dance is just reality's inspiration. There is one question that truly liberates, wherever you are, wherever you are. And you can see 3 dimensions, 3 types of this question. What does your objective existence deserve? What does your subjective experience deserve? And what does the unknown witness serve? And these 3 questions by their mere attempt would have already set into motion the domino effect of an advanced civilization. An advanced humanity. Think of it this way. The person deserves to see their greatest self, but also their species deserves to see it. We should have this view that the species is waiting for the future. It's as if like imagination never goes anywhere. It's like that's the way a person can know that what they are perceiving in the moment is imagination, that if they close or open their eyes, the subject is there, We are the presence of nature humanizing itself in the mirror. The mystery is so grand that what our species has done is just a very small percentage of what's actually going on. And it's kind of cool, sometimes the person in Sufi tradition, they would say a Sufi is grateful for what he gets and what he doesn't get. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, I thought I would think about that quote. How could the Sufi be grateful of something that wasn't good, for example? And it was because the mind had reached a sort of state where it had accepted nature. So when you accept something, you no longer fight it. And when a person accepts the elemental realm, it's like, okay, nature, you're going to play this game, in the outer realms of being temporary. Well, guess what? In the inner realms, I'm going to try to be temporary. And the person suddenly snaps out and notices the unknown witness. The unknown witness is really where the ability to really controlling the mind arises, right? Because the language games are like their own show in a room, but then really the truth of what you are as a being is its own journey. I'll be honest, when I was younger, I was fascinated by what was outside of me in a way where I wasn't open to it. That means I was kind of locked into my inner realms, but I would say in the outer realms, it's as if I cared more about others than myself. And there was something there in that view where when I realized actually all the truth of the realm is coming from within, then the person, it's like whether they were trying to get rid of fear or have endless joy, the person just like, wait a minute, it's too unknown for declaration, you know? And I can't tell you how many times in this life I have come to moments where they're just pure unknown. Just pure unknown. That means it's like I can't have an opinion, and nature is happening as one event. What secondary comment? It's as if the unknown witness, when it distrusts, it gets bodies. When it trusts nature, it doesn't need a body. All of nature is its body. I'm pretty sure this may happen one day. Somebody may come up to me and be like, "What do you mean within? You mean like there's a door you can just go within?" And I would say it's like two-dimensional access points every human being should notice. How space was here before the body and how the body was here before space. That means we can say space is as much of a inner phenomena than matter in this space. The matter has color, has form, has substance, but space has none of those, yet it's being simulated right where the matter is being simulated. So, we can even say, like, if we really wanted to get, have the philosopher's growl come out, it would really be like that space doesn't exist. Space, that means we feel we exist, and then we get to experience things, but it's as if the space where the body is in, it's very strange. It's as if like, who cares the atoms are being atoms? You know what I mean? It's like there's no sense of self to care at that level. So selfhood is on its own a different, just dimensional way of things happening. I would say there's like the New Age community, but I would say we're in the Iron Ages of the New Age community. The Iron New Age. This world has as much potential as the random inventions that have been made in history. I mean, like, this world is not limited by any thought. And I honestly, every day I wake up and I wonder about this, and I'm like, okay, where is the edge? Where is the glitch in the system of perception that hints? And it being from within is like a giant clue, but the within is non-local to itself. That means to myself, like, I'll say it, it's like when we look at others, they're an object, right? But if we were to close our eyes and wonder about who's here, we would arrive to ourselves as a subject, right? And when we look at people, we see how they're an object, but unless they communicate, we don't know what kind of subject they are, you know? And this is the cool thing: when a person is silent, the outer realms reveal their nature. That means a person who's uncomfortable with silence is like a person uncomfortable with their mind. A person uncomfortable with their mind means there's distrust. When there's distrust, the mind is on a sort of lockdown. Without trust, ability doesn't arise. I don't know how anybody ever can do something if they don't have some sort of trust. There's no such thing as, I would say, confidence, just trust or distrust. Either the moment is efficient enough and the vision follows up with it, or the moment is not efficient enough and the dwelling is the unknown observer continues. It's like the purpose of the known is to realize the unknown. The purpose of the unknown is not to realize it can be the known, is to realize that truth surpasses story. And all psychology is in a story. That means we cannot even wonder about how neural activity is being translated into behavior of a person, where we declare it with a verb and we consider them as a noun. But it's like there is a mystery there, right? There's a mystery of self-definitioning. That means it's like language is a discovery, you know? It wasn't here before. So at some point, some creature was like, no way! Sound mixed with symbol. So it's as if like language is the bridge between two dimensions. And I feel through moments of communication and its advancement, the inseparability of the individually active and the collectively active is found. So I feel that if there is just the intent to pilot, the person's like, okay, I'm alive once, I'm on this motorcycle once, if I trusted, what would it be like? How would I drive it? That trust is like, I don't know, it's like a phoenix being reborn from the ashes. It's just so bizarre. It's so bizarre how it has always been, we have always been able to see multiple dimensions in it. It's just the effort. That means there is no fixed value to the moment. It's like life is a river, but the analysis of drops is like meaningless unless the drops are in the river. And it's as if we don't know the character of the future of the species either, right? I have no idea if, like, 100 years from now, the children are going to be compassionate or they're going to be cruel. I just know that there's a meter, that there can be a judgment of their nature, but it's like whether they're compassionate and cruel suggests based on what problems we left behind. And so what's going to happen is, in some sense, imagine intentionally our species tries to do something that the future generations are ashamed of. Okay? And let's say then the future generations realize we did it intentionally and they're like, why? They were like, imagine through time travel, they came back to our ancestors, to us, their ancestors, and they were like, why did you guys intentionally mess up? Right? So we would be ashamed of you. And we would tell them so you guys would disconnect from the mindset of the universe where all our problems live. You see, that means we cannot have, oh, like there is something, but it's like the future, to love the future means to care for the freedom of new lives, which would totally reconfigure the system. And it's hilarious because the future is always up for grabs, you know. The future is as if, like most people, they're trying to, get rid of the suffering from the past, or they're trying to function at a certain level in the present. But those people look really into the future, really into the future, not even like 10 years, not even 100 years. I would say if you dare aim to just be like, okay, let me try to fathom and see how far I can see into the future of this uh, time plane of existence. The more fearless we are in 2020, the less fear the future generations got. And it's only through the designer's eyes. On a design level, everything existentially is equal. It's like a curved line and a straight line. There's no difference. For the viewer. Imagine civilization in the future where children of the planet and just human beings, nobody was in competition in a strange way. The concept of competition had been in a strange way erased. You know, like we didn't have that idea anymore. But we had this idea instead that every person has a hidden program within them that they can activate. That means it's as if every human being has come to figure out the mystery of their own eyes. If they can find a way to do it, that it's like win-win for the individual and the collective, and that's all there is to it. It's like the door to truth was open the moment there was light in our eyes. You know that song from DMX, Who Let the Dogs Out? It's like, who let the lights in? You know, it's as if it's like, did I give the sun permission to have its light beams enter my eyes? You know, it's like, who do I call to complain about this? The poet Hafez says, the sun never tells the earth, you owe me. Look at what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky, something like that. You know, that quote was maybe like 85% accurate, but you know, the whole idea is that if there is victory in the inner realms, the outer realms, there's no dissension in moral nature in the outer realms. That means people are feeling incomplete, and their response to their own incompleteness becomes their behavior in the outer realms. Do you know? But if we had this view that everything is unknown, so technically it's like there's no such thing, it's as if like the era of knowledge ended and the era of unknowledge began. You know? That means, you know, right now we're caring to know things. People are like, oh my God, is that a new book on the subject? Let me buy it. You know? But imagine there comes a point in history where we're like, oh my God, so much information. Like, what is this? You know, it's like, how can knowledge just be walking between endless shelves of books? You know, it has to be more, right? So then the practical dimension comes, and culture keeps it alive in that way. You know, it's as if a world without fools is a world is everybody's a fool in that world, because there is no update. You know, and it's strange. It's as if there is never a way we can speak to a person when a person has within them a memory. They have all the moments where they have lived on this earth. Like that is a big deal. That is a big deal, that right now we are a container for all the versions of ourselves that we have dwelt through moments in the space-time continuum, you know? And so after some point, the philosopher puts down the pen and then joins the main event. You know? There will come a point in my life where I know, where it's like whatever I'm trying to do in this life, I have to like put the pen down and then start slowly walking to my inner realms, you know. Because one thing is clear, that if the definition of life, if we're saying meaning is like to go towards something, people are like, have your goals set out, have your, you know, mission clear, you know, and so it's as if like when we can only have a mission in a landscape, right, in an area where there is content. But once the body goes, it's as if there's no player to be in a game anymore, right? So even if there's continuity as attention and presence, all the behavioral developments of the player, it's like have to be let go. That means it's as if this life, it's as if like the same time every day I'm existing in it, I'm also realizing it's like if I take it too seriously, I miss out on what's being here. That means I've had moments where people have talked to me in a very rude way. And then my only view was like, okay, I could like totally bring out the mirror and reciprocate. But on another level, it's like I remember this Tibetan Buddhist wisdom where it was like it was just Buddhist view where they're like anger is like burning coal. If when you get angry, your own hands burn, and the coal you throw on others also burns them. Right? So it's a fire that you gotta let it just die down on its own, you know? Or how Galileo says you cannot teach anyone anything, you can only make him realize it, you can only make the man realize it within himself. That means there is no teacher, there has never been. There has just been a mind working as hard as the heart is beating. So we have to have literally on this planet randomity training, making people comfortable with not just life having to be one narrative of meaning, so then wars can happen, you know, that it's like multidimensional freedom. That is it. These two words are like the greatest ally of the future generations. Anyways, guys, this talk will end now. Thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Blessings.